and we'll get all our friends around us and we'll sing a song together.
1, 2, 3, 4. My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine. And again. My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine.
When I am touched, then I know how I feel. My feelings are mine and my feelings are real. Sometimes it's hard to say no and be strong. When the no feeling comes, then I know something's wrong. My body's mine from my head to my toe. Please leave me alone when you hear me say no. My body's mine to be used as I choose, not to be threatened or forced or abused. This is my body, it's what I've got time. I've got to take care of this body of mine.
My body's nobody's body.
Welcome to Pedos Down Under Radio, episode 2. My name's Steve McMurray and I'm here with Fiona Barnett. This episode is really interesting. Exposes a lot of people, especially the Wood Royal Commission, groups like Hillsong Church, and the New South Wales Police Force, and the New South Wales government in general. So this is going to be a really interesting podcast and radio show today. But Fiona, why don't you tell us a little bit about the interview that you did with Deb?
Yeah, well, prepare to have your minds blown, folks. I mean, I thought I knew a lot about the pedophile ring that abused me, but I have a bit of a new perspective on it, thanks to Deb, who's incredibly brave. Deb's been fighting this pedophile network since the 1980s, and she's the New South Wales Police and Children Services and various organisations have continued to victimise her because she dared speak out about the abuse of her 2 children in what was Hillsong when they were Christian Life Centre, started by pedophile Frank Houston, who abused hundreds of children, boys. And so it turns out that Hillsong is actually a cover for ritual abuse and mind control. And I know from another victim that Dr. Anthony Kidman was actually involved in the unethical practices, psychological practices in conjunction with Hillsong as well. So he would ensure that the victims did not speak. So yeah, it's a bit of a disturbing interview as well to realise that our society is this far gone, so far infiltrated.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's
absolutely gone. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, Deb's a great example. Everywhere she's gone, like you, Fiona, she gets harassed by these people who don't want to get her story out, who are getting her story out. So, at what level does it stop in the Australian government? And it's so disgusting to think that, Hillsong, I mean, it's a great community. There's great people I know who go to it. But when you think about it, they are. And the church worships the almighty dollar, not Jesus Christ. And it's a massive problem. I mean, that's common in sort of those big church sort of Christian groups promote themselves as this great, center for children, young people and youth. And there's all sorts of great things happening there. Music, it's entertainment, but there's too much focus on money. They really aren't switched on to what the Bible's actually saying. And I think that's for a reason. They're misleading Christians on purpose. And wouldn't it make sense if you're a group, a bunch of Satanists, and you really want to do some harm, if you want to get your idea out there, if you want to make this world molded into the world that you want to live in it as, you want to infect the churches, you want to start taking over the organizations, you want to start perverting Christianity, you want to start destroying it from within. So there's an operation going on here that's been evident from the current Royal Commission, from all the sexual abuse cases that are going on in the Catholic Church, from all the Anglican churches, from all the other churches, especially exactly in Hillsong here today. I mean, at what level does it stop? It's this group has also infected the New South Wales government and the Australian federal government, from what Debra's saying.
Look, I'm a born-again Christian. For want of a better term, it's just become so tainted, that term. But I won't be affiliated with any church. I'm so thoroughly disgusted. And now I know why with this Hillsong business. I knew it was bad, but all the Assemblies of God churches and the various denominations in Australia have been completely infiltrated by these Luciferian pedophiles. And they've accessed children under the guise of teaching them Sunday school classes and daycare and all this sort of thing. And it involves probation and parole. It involves child protection. It involves the police. Work at Hillsong. These are people who attend Hillsong and they work for the coven that's behind Hillsong to snatch children. They target single mums, vulnerable mums, they access their children. And people have to know that these are not Christian churches. These are evil organisations. They are foul. They're conducting Luciferian rituals at the church. They're abducting children in the past. They're prostituting. They're still prostituting children. I know from other victims. And this really needs to be exposed. And yeah, what can you say, Steve? It's just it's worse than we thought, isn't it? Through their practices and their rock music concerts.
Oh, jeez.
It's hypnotic. They employ subtle mind control techniques and brainwashing techniques and hypnosis techniques.
Absolutely.
And, they actually, the types of materials that they teach are sort of kowtow to the Kundalini spirit, not God's Holy Spirit of the Bible. So some of their teachings are just foul. It's all this New Age doctrine, and is it Anthony Robbins? Is that motivational speaker, Tony Robbins?
Mm-hmm.
This Hillsong steals a lot of his techniques, and these NLP and more subtle, persuasive techniques on the audience. So, enter their church at your own risk, people.
Mm.
Welcome to the show, Deb.
Hi, Fiona. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So, what I thought we'd do, Deb, is there are people who have really no clue regarding the Wood Royal Commission, and they don't understand the relationship between the Wood Royal Commission and the current Child Abuse Royal Commission that's happening at a federal level at the moment. So could you just give us a basic introduction to how you came into contact with the Wood Royal Commission and, when you first found out about your children's abuse that necessitated you going to the Wood Royal Commission?
Yeah, well, we go back to 1989, and when my children first disclosed. When my son was only 6 years old, and he told me what happened at this particular man had raped him anally and whatnot. His words were, as a 6-year-old, he stuck his dick in my bum. I think my world stopped at that moment, and then once he was believed, he was a full-on avalanche of information coming out, giving me details of what happened then, not just that event. Telling me about at the church where they went to, which was called the Christian Life Centre back then, which is now known as Hillsong. Now, he told me about the star on the floor with candles on the points of this star inside a circle with all these adults around in robes, black robes, chanting, all this satanic sort of information. I didn't know anything about it. The only thing I'd ever seen was a movie called The Exorcist. I mean, other than that, I didn't have a clue about satanic anything. And then my daughter started talking as well. But the thing that, not only the sexual abuse, which they told me about, they also told me, which I believe, I don't have any proof of it, but I believe the children were also drugged. They said they gave them a drink and a biscuit. They said, and then they went all funny in the head. And that's when everything started. Then when they described to me about the murders of the children that they witnessed. There were several, one of whom was identified as Helen Karapetes, who disappeared from her home at Marrickville. Now, she's still on the missing persons list. My children described in detail what they did to her, that they cut her chest open, they pulled her heart out, they were forced to drink blood, all sorts of disgusting satanic stuff. Now, I do believe that, from what I've been told, that there are people within the police force and other areas which make sure that a lid stays on these sort of cases, that if anyone brings them up, they are dealt with, and they will shut them down and nothing will be done. Now, when I was with, how it went about from the beginning, when I first went to police and reported it and whatnot, the police were dragging their chain and whatnot. They weren't seeming to act in the capacity that I expected. I expected, like, wow, you know, there's murder and everything involved here, to jump on it. No, they didn't. What they did was they contacted DOCS, which was then known as Family and Community Services, or what other people around the world would know as child welfare. And then they were wanting to talk to the children, examine the children. Then they wanted me to have a psychiatric assessment. Basically, they were pointing fingers at me. The efforts they went to and the lengths that this DOCS unit went to discredit me, including false reports saying that my mother and myself and whatever, were all schizophrenic. Yet we'd never seen a psychiatrist before. My mother had never seen a psychiatrist. My sister had, due to other issues, when she broke up with her partner and whatnot. But I've never been diagnosed with any mental illness other than now, with all the events that have gone on over past 25 years of onslaught by the system.
And continual victimisation and harassment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, goodness me, I was targeted. I had 3 car accidents in 6 months. 2 of those were within 4 weeks of each other, none of which were my fault. I was driven straight at in cars to make it look like a car accident.
Yeah.
I've been shot at, had my food tampered with, I've been poisoned. I was very, very ill for a while with that. So the ongoing non-stop onslaught to attack, harass, discredit, trying to push you over the edge. Yeah, I have PTSD.
Yeah.
But that's not a mental illness, so to speak. It's a stress response to what's happened to you, not what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
So you tend to live on a knife's edge with all the time on high alert, hypervigilance, alert for any danger. It's no different to any soldier or anyone else in high-end fight-flight sort of situations where you've got to have your wits about you at all times. So other than that, no, I don't have any problems with that. I have been diagnosed by several psychiatrists as not having that, so they can go for their life to try and discredit me now. It's not going to work.
So, Deb, you've told me during our chats before about a time when the police, you'd moved out of a house and the police turned up and the new tenants were confronted with what looked like a bit of a siege situation.
Yes.
That's a good example, I think, of what you're talking about. Can you just tell us about that?
Yes, it is. What happened was, with all of this, eventually, when the police were failing to act and DOCS were doing what they're doing to shut down the case, I got involved with Debra Grusevan. Debra Grusevan was a politician in Parliament at the time, and she assisted and pushed this through political channels to actually get an investigation going. Now, when they did the investigation and all the rest of it, they basically it was a thing to shut me down. Okay, so time goes on, and Deirdre encouraged me then to go to the Wood Royal Commission to get this into them. So I did that, and when I did that, the Wood Royal Commission sent me back to the Witness Protection Unit, because when this happened, Deirdre got us into the Witness Protection Unit for our safety, because the attempts on my children's lives, people from the church tried to grab my children after they'd disclosed. So we got placed in witness protection. So, and then all the attacks on us. So then when we went to the Wood Royal Commission, they sent me back. They said, well, look, it's because I took in the evidence of what's happening. And he said, it's obvious your identity's been blown. I said, what do you mean blown? It's never been safe. They sent me back to the Witness Protection Unit. Now, when I went back to them, for them to help me, the hostility I was confronted with was unbelievable. Now, the woman in there, her name was Megan Backhouse. Now, she said to me, well, basically, seeing as you're helping the Wood Royal Commission against us, you go back to them and you get them to help you.
Yeah.
When she said to me in the Police Witness Protection Unit, you go back to them and help you, the hostility, the venom that came out of her mouth, I was taken aback. I was like, oh my God. And I knew at that moment I had to get out of where I was. So I left there. When I left there, I went back to the Wood Royal Commission. I told them what happened. When I left there, I was followed from the Wood Royal Commission building and by a man in a grey suit. When I got home, I started making immediate preparations, and I got on the phone to try and organise something somewhere else to live straight away, and then started packing. I moved out of the house approximately 2 to 3 weeks later, so we weren't living there anymore. And I never told anyone where we were going or where we'd moved to or that we'd even moved.
Smart.
Now, some new people moved into the house a few days after I'd left. And what happened was they had a child that went to the same school as my daughter. And on the Monday following this event, this child came to the school and told my daughter what happened. So I immediately rang the mother at that house and spoke to her and asked her what happened. She told me. So I explained to her the situation with us. And she was, oh. Now, what this woman explained to me was the police blocked off the street at either end from my house, and they came onto my house like a big siege situation. They were looking for me.
Yep.
So once she confirmed everything that happened, and I'd done nothing wrong, they were going to shut me up after that, I believe. So anyway, I rang Debra Grissevin and I told her what happened. And she said, have you done anything? I said, of course not. So she said, leave it with me, I'll make some inquiries. She made inquiries, she came back to me, she said, Deb, she said, no one knows anything about it. It's like it never happened.
Yeah.
So she said, what's this woman's name? So she rang her as well and spoke to her. So, it's all recorded that this event did happen, but it's not on any records anymore.
Yeah, that's
Tell me what's going on there, sweetie.
Yeah, well, that's what I refer to as the shadow police force. They're the Luciferian pedophile ring employed police force within the New South Wales Police Force.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've even had a highway patrol guy, copper, police officer, he has said to me to my face, we're going to get you.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. And he's only young, but he's very arrogant. And I've been trying to fix this problem that the state created with our identity and whatnot so that we could travel, so that we could, have a normal life. I mean, my children, as they grew up, and the attempts on their lives in between was phenomenal. I actually had to send my son away to live with a friend for a year because I wasn't coping with trying to raise my daughter, who was out there as well. I was doing all this stuff. I was working, raising my kids alone, and then they were following my son to school. Then they actually made attempts to run him over and chased him. My son jumped between cars to avoid this car trying to, chase him all over the place to run him over, to make it look like an accident. He actually ended up running into a house. After that event, because I couldn't do everything. I couldn't be in several places at once. I couldn't be at work and looking after both kids who were in different places. And,
as a single mum, yeah?
Yeah, as a single mum, doing everything all at once. I couldn't be there for both of them and work too and protect them all, and, it was impossible. So I sent my son to live with a friend of mine for over a year to keep him alive, to keep him safe.
Yeah.
But my son, that affected him badly, feeling like he wasn't wanted. He was sort of kicked to the curb. But it wasn't the case. It's just that I couldn't do everything. What was said to me was eventually, you're a very strong woman. Mm-hmm. They've thrown everything at you, haven't they? And I said, yeah. And they said that, and I've actually had professionals say to me, how are you still standing? How have you still got this together after everything that's gone on? And I just said, well, I'm not going to lay down and die.
But also, it's what you said to me. You're not actually a victim yourself. You were a strong, average, normal person before all of this.
Yeah.
So you weren't developmentally sort of scarred like your children have been through their abuse. So you're coming from a reference point that makes you much more stable and able to handle more, wouldn't you say?
I would say so. But I also grew up in a low socioeconomic area as a child, and it sort of gives you a bit of street smarts, and you have that toughness sort of thing that when you grow up in an area like that. That I think that gave me a good foundation for this, so that I was lucky that I wasn't brought up doing what I'm doing now. I'm lucky I wasn't brought up in a well-to-do area with, in bubble wrap, so to speak.
Yeah.
With a silver spoon.
Yeah.
Because if I had have, I would never have coped with the onslaught. I would have gone off the edge. I don't think anyone else could have taken a lot of what I've gone through.
No.
And stayed okay without, some sort of therapy and help and all the rest of it. I mean, I went to a therapist once. My girlfriend said, to me, Deb, you need tools to cope with this, because there was days that I was ripping my hair out and crying and whatever. And she said, look, because I was so upset with what was going on, especially when the attempts on my kids' lives, Yeah. She said, well, you need to go and see someone, get some counselling, and and then we'll give you the tools to help you cope. I went to this counsellor and psychologist. I'm talking to her, within 10 minutes she was crying her eyes out. And I'm going, what?
Yeah.
And she said, I can't help you, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
And so she was mirroring what I should have been feeling, and I'm looking at going, well, hello, I can't get some tools.
Yeah.
You can't even hear it, let alone deal with it. How do you feel? How do you think I feel living it?
Yeah. People just don't understand until they've lived it themselves. It's very surreal, and it sounds like something out of a movie, a Hollywood movie.
Yeah. Well, also the other thing was the docs officers involved. One in particular, her name was Isabel Duncan. Now, she worked out of the Strathfield office in Sydney. Now, she went to great lengths to discredit me. So in the end, her sitting there laughing and smirking, I have no doubt that she was a damage control agent or involved with them.
Oh, yeah. You know them when they start smirking at you.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like some two-heads cops that
loud.
I've had. They smirk at you. You know that they're one of them.
Yeah.
You know they're not just working for them, they are part of it.
That's right. I have no doubt. Well, she was actually caught later on doing the same thing with another case at another office later on. Trying to do the same thing.
Yeah. And it's the same with what you said about the police writing reports and people writing reports to try and write you off as nuts.
Oh, yeah.
That's just happened time and time and time again. That's their
Well, when I
typical...
confronted docs later on, when I actually got those reports, because I didn't see them prior, when I actually got them and I was horrified, and anyway, I got back to them. I'd already taken copies, and DJ Grooseman and others all had copies of this first report. Now, docs didn't know that. So when I go back to them, they'd amended their report. They took out the lies that I could prove were lies, and the ones that it was he said, she said, they left it in and they'd put on the amended report, mother denies this.
Yeah.
Such as they made a report that what happened was, before the abuse was all disclosed, I moved in the middle of the year and my son was 4. Anyway, he was already at a kindergarten, preschool before this. Well, during the middle of the year, it's very hard to get them in anywhere. So I'd rang the Family Community Services because they often help with special placements or getting you in somewhere in your area where you've moved to. So what they did was they contacted me and said, well, there's a place here. But in the meantime, with them and their delays, I'd found something for my son anyway. So they had that information of where they were going to get my son into at the time, into this other preschool. But the thing is, I'd already organised something else somewhere else, and he never went. So in their report, they put down that my son attended this place, and the facilitator there made reports to them that my son attended with bruises on him and this and that and the other. And when I confronted them about that, they were horrified. They were, because they were only going off the information on their file.
So they were
And it was
trying to,
fabricated.
they would have snatched your kids off you, wouldn't they, under the Child Protection Act?
Yeah. Well, when I could prove all that, then that's when they sat back. And then when I got the amended report, that amended report was copied and put out everywhere as well. So everyone had both copies. Well, when I went to see a solicitor later on and I took all of these paperwork to him, I didn't know he was also a danger.
Yep.
Anyway, I left it with him, and because he wasn't in his office at the time. And anyway, I took the paperwork down, and this is going back in the 90s. You know, I was struggling then, and we didn't have internets, and or everybody having printers in home and all this sort of thing. That was all expensive to do. And being a single mum, I didn't have a lot of money.
And there was no. People have to understand, the young ones today, there was no social media back then.
No,
there was no
social
internet,
media.
there was no nothing. So it was very, very hard to get information. You had to manually go and get it from a library, look,
Yes.
get the book out, get the newspaper, and if you didn't happen to buy the newspaper that week, that was the end of that story.
That's right.
You don't see it again.
Speaking of that, I did go to the library and whatever to try and understand what the kids were saying to me. Because, they were describing it in the way a child would. They would tell me about the sticks. Now, I didn't understand what they talked about. I'm thinking, what are they talking about, sticks? Well, anyway, once I got a book out on Alistair Crowley, it was, they were talking about wands. And, the penny dropped. Oh, great. I got it. Bingo. The light bulb went on. It was one of them aha moments. Then I was making sense because the kids were describing it as they saw it. Literally, they didn't know. And now you see Harry Potter, with the sticks and the
indoctrinating the youth
things like
today.
that. Yeah. And anyway, so I went with the book because I wasn't in the library to start with. And anyway, I joined the library a couple of months later. The kids disclosed on the 28th of September, 89. I didn't join the library till October in 89. Anyway, I had the card where I joined with the date on it. So I get this book out and I read it, and I took it over to Docs, and I said to the woman there, I said, "You want to read this?" I said, "Because my kids are telling me exactly what's in here, but more. There's more detail my kids are coming out with than what's written in here." So then they tried to say that I'd been getting all these books out, or I was into all of this occult stuff, and I'm planting these ideas in my kids' heads.
Yeah.
So anyway, when the investigation started, with a task force eventually was formed, I then produced the card. And I said, well, look, you might say that I'm smart or good or whatever, but I can't turn back time. My kids came out with this 2 months prior to me joining the library, and here's the card and here's the evidence that I wasn't even a member of it, and didn't get the book out until well after the date. So you tell me how I knew about this back then.
Yeah.
They tried all sorts of tricks like that.
Oh, they try anything they can.
Oh yeah. So what I've done ever since, then was try to create awareness. Now I worked with a lot of people over the years to bring about awareness of this. Back in a time, when, like you said, there was no media, there was no other way to do it. It was by phone calls, it was by public speeches and going to organisations, groups, meetings, which is why
and
I ended up going into joining ASCA at the time. I also went to NAPCAN. Then when Franca Arena, another politician here who stepped in after Deidre Grisevin was annihilated in Parliament for exposing other people, she was removed from the front bench in Parliament.
And Deb, she exposed people like that particular lawyer, Marsden.
Yes.
And people who later on it came out that he was indeed a pedophile. So these people that they accused under parliamentary privilege turned out later on they all committed suicide, and other victims have since come forward, and I've spoken to a lot of victims of those very same people. Yes,
with John Marsden, and then there was Frank Arkell.
He's one of my perps from Wollongong.
Right, now he was actually murdered later by one of his victims.
Yes, he was, and they wrote, people don't realise, they've covered that up, haven't they, that they cut off various parts of his body, didn't they? And didn't they leave a big encircled pentagram in blood on the wall?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Others were Senator Collins. I don't know if you remember him. Senator Collins was another pedophile from the Northern Territory in Parliament, and he was a known pedophile. Now, he died before they actually went to court.
Yeah.
Suicide, so that it didn't come out.
Yeah, a lot of them were suicided.
Yeah. or I call them assisted suicides.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them, because even if they can't do it themselves, their cronies or their associates in these groups will get rid of them, so that it's all covered up, nothing comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like a big, what they call it in the old movie Get Smart, the cone of silence, I call it.
Yes, it is. It is.
You know, they can't. It's like the mafia code. You know, nobody talks. You talk, you're dead.
Yeah, yeah. There's no.
Then they're putting everyone else that's involved at risk, or bring attention to them, and then they may look at the spider web connections, you know, and go out and bring attention to someone else.
Yeah.
So they've got to contain it, and how they contain it is they eliminate that threat.
Yeah. One of their codes they live by is you can do whatever you want, just don't get caught.
Yeah. And if you do get caught, you're gone.
Yeah, and it's like the mafia. What happens? Yeah, everybody's seen these mafia movies where if someone in the mafia stuffs up, then they all take them for a drive and they shoot them.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what they do to their own. If
exactly.
If they stuff up, they're a goner, and they all know that's the rule.
Yeah, that's right. The thing is, with us people who didn't know anything about this, see, my children, I wasn't born into any of this. I wasn't abused in that way or anything like that or whatnot. I had my children. My husband at the time, you know, he was having affairs and whatever, so we broke up and I was a single mum. So all my kids did was they went to school and they went to Sunday school, you know, because I was brought up like that. I didn't think anything of it. It was a man who I knew in the area all my life since I was a child. I didn't know he was a pedophile.
Yeah.
So I allowed my kids to be picked up in this Sunday school bus, small little bus, and to go to Sunday school. And I was raising my kids and I was going to work and whatnot, just to make ends meet.
Can I just ask, is that the same? Did Helen Karapides, did she go to that same Sunday school?
Yes, she went to the same Sunday school.
And did Samantha Knight?
She went to the same, not to the same building. She went, from what the information I have, she went to the one in the city.
Okay, she's another victim who went missing.
Yes. Now, they also were investigating another girl they'd moved away from this area to another area. And she was taken from her bedroom window. Yes. Her name was Renee Atkins.
Renee Atkins.
Yeah. Now, I don't know what the outcome of that was, but that sort of went very quiet. So I've got a funny feeling that was involved too because of the nature of it. The child was only... she was only young. She was only
Deb, these were very bold abductions.
Oh, yeah.
So Karapides, Helen, she was just... It seems obvious that she was taken by people she knew because she was playing in a front yard.
Yeah. Well, now I look back over where, you know, it's easy to be wise in hindsight when you become aware of things. When I was growing up, there was another little boy that was murdered in the area, and his name was Simon Brooks. Simon Brooks was only a toddler.
Yeah.
And they never found his killer. And he had his penis cut off and put down his throat and everything else. There's
that's
quite a number of murders in the area.
That's Luciferian ritual.
Yeah. There was quite a number of murders in the area over the years, but there was no connection made to any of this. People are thinking, you know, some sick persons out there doing, you know, murders.
Random killings.
Yeah, and
no.
This is the other thing that we're talking about, you know, even with the backpacker killings. They when I contacted the backpacker investigation unit, because it was first in the paper about, you know, the way the bodies were laid out in the forest and
weren't they all dismembered and spread out?
Yeah, they were spread out and they were in basically a pentagram pattern of where they were.
Yes, it was. I remember it was a Luciferian sort of cult behind it.
So when I contacted them, that unit, lo and behold, the 2 I see in command of my investigation was in that one. And he said, "Oh no! He went to great lengths to reassure me and to put the brakes on any connection to that at all."
Saying it was Ivan Milat.
Yeah. Well, at that stage, Ivan Milat hadn't been charged or anything like that. He didn't say who it was. But at that stage, with that call,
yeah, but they had to pin it on. Not that Ivan's an angel. I'm not saying that, but it certainly was more than one person involved, and it was certainly a Luciferian coven. Ritual murder.
Look, I don't know if the Malats are involved in any of that or not.
I do because my father and his brothers associated with the Malats. I know quite a bit about the Mallats, and
so basically, Mallat's family was involved, and he was the patsy to take the
he's the patsy
for the rest of them.
But I don't know. I'm not sure. I know that they were generally involved in a lot of dirty dealings, and you know, and I know that they were. I think Ivan attended Engadine Boys Town, where I was a second generation ritual abuse victim. But you know, as to what really happened with that particular incident, I don't know, with those murders. But
I knew there must have been something in the background, but I didn't know what, because I wasn't involved in any of that. But I have supported a lot of other non-offending parents and kids over the years.
Yeah.
One interesting fact that came to light during all this support that I was doing and trying to raise awareness and trying to protect other kids and support families and whatnot, while I was a single mum raising 2 kids, trying to hold down a job and everything else too, attending commissions and, you know, police investigation. In all that, an interesting fact came out when someone else I know went to the Victims' Compensation Court for their kids.
Yeah.
Anyway, my case was mentioned to them because we won our Victims' Compensation trial. Initially, I shouldn't say first one, because what happened was with the Victims' Compensation Unit, when my information went in there, we were given a date and the information had to be in by a certain date. Well, what happened was the Victims' Compensation Unit Tribunal, which is just the same as a court here, they held my case prior to that date, and the information wasn't in there, and they said no, right? So we didn't get anywhere. So my solicitors at the time had to appeal it because the tribunal, Victims' Compensation Tribunal, erred in law. In other words, they didn't want the information in there, and they wanted it down.
They never
so
do.
Then we went to appeal. Now, at the appeal, my children were allowed to give evidence, even though the Crown tried to stop it. They tried to stop my children going in to give evidence. Now, the judge at the time was Judge Ainsley Wallace. This is in this was in 1997. Anyway, my kids gave evidence in there, told them what happened and whatnot. My kids were believed. Anyway, we won on that day.
And Deb, what evidence did they give? Did they give evidence as to watching ritual human sacrifice?
I wasn't allowed in the room. I wasn't allowed in there, and I was never told what the kids said.
Okay.
In the court, I wasn't allowed to be in there.
Is that the basis of it all, though?
Beg pardon?
Is that the basis of their evidence? Your children's evidence? Was it to do with the sacrifices and
no, it was basically on the injury to them. It was basically on the sexual abuse
at Hillsong Church. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Now,
and can I just ask?
The only thing that was said to me was my daughter was upset when she came out. My son actually came out feeling good because he'd been heard and believed. Yeah. My daughter was upset and angry because she was a little bit older then.
Yeah.
And this barrister for the Crown was actually calling her a liar on the stand.
Yeah.
And she swore at her, you know.
So your kids had their day in court, so to speak.
Yes,
and
they
got
awarded
to
victims'
testify.
compensation, so it's criminal damages, basically. So my children's case was upheld. Well, anyway, later on down the track, this other woman goes to victims' compensation with her kids, and my case was mentioned. They said there was no records of it.
Really? So
then I had to go to her solicitor and give him a letter of authority to access that information, and I also gave a letter to my solicitors to
release
this other solicitor the information which had suddenly disappeared. Now, there was other incidents, such as when I took my children to a hospital that they'd been to prior to being re-identified. My children's records disappeared from the hospital. That was on the computer, but there was no files there. What I found was files were disappearing from everywhere where we'd been before. Mine was still there, but my kids wasn't. Now, my children, when I asked them why didn't they tell me about this to start with, in the beginning when it was first happening, and they said because they told us, and I couldn't understand a child feeling like that because the fear and the terror of witnessing children being abused and murdered. They said, the children told me that they said that if we ever told anyone that they would kill you and then they would get us forever. So they remained silent.
And they mean, the perpetrators mean what they said too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, so...
And they've done their best too. to carry
Yeah.
through with that promise. Now, tell us, I'm interested in, now, was Frank Houston involved in the church at that time?
Yes.
So
Frank
let's
Houston
just tell
was
people who Frank Houston is. So he is the father of Brian Houston, who currently runs Hillsong Church, but Frank Houston was actually a pedophile, and he was charged in New Zealand, I think
That's
it was,
right.
wasn't it? With,
Yes, and he fled over here to Australia. He set up the Christian Life Centre in Sydney, and from what I know, he went from strength to strength with the backing of one of the alphabet agencies in the States. Yeah. Given what we know about the military, mind control, MK Ultra, etc., I believe he was used then, because of his background, then for recruiting the children for the trauma-based mind control, and they would then select the right children they wanted from this. And I believe it's still going on elsewhere. I have reports from elsewhere in other Assemblies of God Pentecostal churches over here, such as that are affiliated with all of that, the other names they go under.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, indeed, I know of one young woman. I've had a bit to do with her, and she's not that old now, and she was prostituted by Hillsong, Brian Houston's church, from the age of 2 to 22 years. She was prostituted within the church. And I understand they make kiddie porn and snuff films in Hillsong as well.
Yes, I've heard that. My children said that. They, what they said was that when all this ritual stuff was going on, the abuse and murders and all the rest of it, the sacrifices, they said that it was all filmed. They said that people were there with cameras, and there's cameras up on the wall. They also said there was secret passageways, secret doorways they went through. It looked like a wall, but they pushed on a certain part and that door would open. So I'd say it's concealed doorways. Yeah, made it look like a panel or whatever. I don't know. I didn't go in there.
And my guess is that the current Hillsong Church, the epicenter down there, with the Gloria Jean's cafes and everything else in it, would have the same sort of setup. You'd find something underneath. So. There'd be some sort of altar and tunnel system underneath.
Yeah, well, one of the perpetrators with my children was also an architect.
Yeah.
Right. His name was Ian Longstaff. Now, I told the police when I first went there, I said, either you get him or I will.
Yeah.
Because I had no doubts what went on.
Yeah.
So, but because the only reason that I said that was because not only did my children say that this was happening, but they named a lot of other children. Now, what came back to me in the investigation was that when they told me that they'd spoken to a lot of the other children, and this officer who told me this, his name was Royce Gorman. He was the 2IC in the New South Wales Police Force at the time. He said to me, we've spoken to a lot about the other children, and we know something has happened to them. I said, how? And he said, because of the look on their face. He said, they went like this, and he showed me, like a look of fear, terror, their eyes opening wide and going, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
He said, so we know from their reaction something has happened, but we can't question them further. We're not allowed. Because of Ralph Underwager and co. and all the others like that.
Let's tell people about... Tell people about Ralph Underwager or Wonderwager.
Yeah, I'll explain that.
He was the founders in America of the False Memory Foundation.
And, him and his pedophile buddies.
They're all pedophiles. And Ralph Underwager was actually interviewed by a magazine called Pedika. And I think it might be Swedish or something like that, or Norwegian or Danish. But anyway, this Pedika magazine, you can look up the archives, and Underwager was quoted as saying that pedophilia was a responsible lifestyle choice for adults.
Yes. People like Ralph Underwager and Blaze and the Boy Love Associations and whatever. They've all infiltrated everywhere. They've infiltrated the gay movement as well, using it as a cover of...
as a cover, so that, if you bash pedophiles, you're bashing gays. This is what they're saying. And pedophilia and being gay have nothing to do with each other.
That's
Unless somebody is into everything. There are people, when they're perverted, they will engage in homosexual sex, but they will also engage in sex with animals and sex with children and all sorts of really weird stuff.
Yeah.
So they actually are, twisted.
Yes.
So it's not to be confused with people who are homosexual.
No, look, sexuality is one thing, regardless of your sexual orientation. If it's with consenting adults, that's, and then no one's being harmed or whatever, and it's all mutual, regardless of what the fetish is. I mean, there's a lot of people who have different fetishes and whatever, for whatever reasons. That's off the table as far as I'm concerned. It's
not what we're talking
about
here.
It's their business. But when it comes down to children and grooming children, because that's your bent, and we know it causes harm. No, that's not off the table. That's on the table. You want to abuse someone else's kid? I don't care whose child it is. Now, this is why I kept going. We could have been okay and just gone away quietly. But because my children named all these other children and the police could not question them further, they could not do anything, and I asked them why, and they said because of the issue of contamination, this whole issue that came up because of Ralph Underwager coming out here with the Mr. Bubbles case.
Yeah, tell us about the Mr. Bubbles case, just what your personal contact with it was. I've written a little article including all that information, but tell us from an insider's perspective.
Right, well, doing all this support work and whatnot, I was called in by police who were also very upset about the way the Bubbles case was handled and taken from them and destroyed, basically.
By
and they
whom?
thought it was real. Anyway, they asked me, they wanted to know information about my kid's case and the correlations involved. Now, a lot of stuff was not made public in relation to the Bubbles case. Now, what I was told by these police who were involved with this case was that these children were also taken to a Christian life centre in another area of Sydney called Mona Vale, which was near the Sea Beach Kindergarten, where the Mr. Bubbles case...
And this is became Hillsong again, didn't it?
I don't know if that one's also Hillsong. It probably is.
Did they amalgamate? I thought they amalgamated. So
yeah, they did a lot of them, but a lot of them are still under the Assembly of God's name of Christian Outreach or Christian Centre or whatever. They go by various different names. They don't all come under the one umbrella now.
Yeah, they branched out.
And I think, they've branched out, but I also think they are still affiliated, connected. But to give the illusion of separation, they retain their names or whatever.
Yeah, I know. Look, just Assemblies of God related churches up in the Tweed area are highly affiliated with Hillsong, yet their name isn't Hillsong.
They're exactly what I'm saying. And that's to give them the illusion that they're not part of it, but they are. Because they don't want any cases coming out where it's all Hillsong this and Hillsong that.
Yes.
Because Hillsong is now branded, really big as far as the Christian sort of stuff goes, especially with music and publications and
yes, the
fake
churchianity movement. Yes.
Yeah. So the other thing was when I asked the police about interviewing all the children together, I said, well, why don't we just put them in a room together and film them talking? And they said, oh, no, we can't do that. I said, why not? And they didn't have an answer. Now, they knew that there was a problem with interviewing children. But because of Ralph Underwager being brought over here by the Derrins to protect them, so to speak, in their case over here, you've got to understand the Mr. Bubbles case, I think, was one of the first in relation to to ritual abuse.
Just to fill in listeners, the Mr. Bubbles case involved allegations of satanic ritual abuse at a Sydney kindergarten or preschool. Yeah. Preschool, wasn't it?
Yes.
Daycare centre type thing. And the kids, and then 60 Minutes covered it, didn't they?
Yes, they did. And then Ralph Underwager dragged them through the courts in the US for exposing his involvement here and questioning his so-called expert testimony.
Yeah, and then the media, Australian media, were reluctant to cover your case then, weren't they?
Yes, it made them all the media very wary then, because everyone was wary about being dragged through the courts and being sued. So, because I was interviewed by Mike Munro of 60 Minutes at the time. It didn't go to air because of those fears. They were worried about being sued.
But you did a lot of other media, didn't you, Deb?
Oh, yes. I also did public speeches. We had one rally at Hyde Park where Deidre Roosevelt and Frank Arena spoke as well, so did I. We did a media events after the Royal Commission report came out, which our case was in there as well. And what happened with that was an interesting situation, because what happened with the Wood Royal Commission, which was really funny, this is very telling. The Victims' Compensation Tribunal Court, when they shut my case down, that was right just before the Wood Royal Commission ended. While we were under appeal and waiting for our matter to be heard, the Wood Royal Commission report was being written. Well, just before the Wood Royal Commission findings and the public release of the books that was written on it, we won our victims' compensation case. But he'd already shut our case down and made it of no event, that it was nothing, that it, this was all fabricated and it didn't happen in his book that he put out in his report. But yet we won our case. So the media jumped all over me at the back of Parliament House when that was all handed out on that day, because we were all there. It was a big media event to see what was going to come out. And several journalists wanted to run the story, but the editors wouldn't allow it because it would discredit Justice Wood, who we now know is also implicated in pedophilia.
Yes.
And what's interesting, what came out with information that was provided to me, was about his adopted daughter, Jenny, a little Eurasian girl, who I was told was hot-shotted once she was past her use-by date.
Can you explain to the listeners what hot-shotted means?
Hot-shot means an overdose of a drug to kill someone.
And how old was Jenny Wood when she died?
I think she was 14 at the time when she was hot-shotted, but she'd been used and abused all her life. So basically, this is where the whole question of adoption of children and whatnot comes into question with me, because their children are basically taken for sale to provide fodder, is what I call them, fodder for their pedophile VIP mates. Children that are selected, basically, depending on age, hair colour, type and whatnot, that satisfies what they want. Now, there is so many children who are in foster care who have been removed, who are being abused and are actually dying. We're talking hundreds per year.
Yeah.
And there's nothing being done.
It's Australia's child protection foster care setup is just a massive child sex trafficking organisation.
Yes,
That's
it is.
All it is.
And
It's
I don't care what organisation it is.
Absolutely. And
government agencies such as what they call DOCS or Family Services Department.
So all these Luciferians have infiltrated all these organisations.
Yeah, Bernardo's,
missing.
Salvo. I don't
Salvos, Bernardo's,
Yeah, I don't care what organisation it is. They all have their people in there. They want to access children.
Every organisation.
The areas where they can access the children. It's as simple as that.
There is no innocent denomination now.
No,
you get innocent people within organisations, but the organisations themselves have been completely taken over. And really what gives legitimacy to that claim is testimonies like yours, when you see all these years later, nothing has been done to expose your story, really, properly. And Helen, Helen Karapides is still missing.
Yeah, Karapides. Helen Karapides is still on the missing persons list officially. If you look her up, you can find her.
Yeah.
I have details. I've spoken to homicide and everything else, and I've asked them to clarify for me. I said, look, if you've got someone on the missing persons list, and you've got two witnesses who have corroborative medical testimony, who can corroborate each other's testimony and witness the murder of this person, why isn't anything done? And they went, I don't know, why?
Yeah.
And they asked questions, and then when I said, I said, isn't age not supposed to be called into question here? That's discrimination based on age. And they said, oh, yes. And I said, well, I have two witnesses with corroborative testimony, corroborative evidence, who witnessed this person's murder. And I said, I want you to investigate it. And then they've asked me details. And as soon as I said they were kids, they shut me down. And when I said it was satanic ritual abuse sacrifice, he was horrified. He ran.
And Helen was, 10 when she was abducted, was she?
Yeah.
So you've got a little 10-year-old girl whose parents are in mourning forever after.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of that. And you think that they murdered Helen Karapides' sister as well because she started talking?
I don't know if they murdered her. I just know that she's died. What I was told was she was suicide. She suicided.
Yeah,
now,
right.
I question that, as I do with everything like that now, but I don't have any evidence on that.
Right.
I also know that her brother was acting out and took a knife to school and whatnot. I think a teacher there was picking on him or something. I don't know. But anyway, I have been told that he actually ended up going to jail.
Yeah.
Now, this child's obviously extremely damaged as well. I believe all the children...
Well, this is how they shut the boys up, Deb. They put the boys in jail and they put the women in psych units.
Yeah. Yeah, that's typical. That's what they try to do to me. They tried that, but I was lucky where I had another psychiatrist by the name of Anne Schlebaum, who I was referred to by Deidre Grisman at the time. And the docs officers, when they sent me to their psychiatrists, I went up to my local doctor as well and got another referral to another psychiatrist. This was prior to Deidre organising me to see Anne. Now, I said to her, in case you've got any little funny ideas up your sleeve, I've got this referral to another one and I'll get another 20 if necessary. And she said, you do what you like, Deborah. And she ran out of my door over that because I was awake to what her little game was, trying to get me to be diagnosed as some sort of nutcase or schizophrenic, which would fit with their report that they wrote, the false reports that they wrote to discredit me. Well, when I went over to their psychiatrist unit and spoke to them and told them I was already seeing someone else and who she was, they backed off and they said, oh, well, we'll let her do it then. Because they knew that it was the game was up. There was nothing they could do. Yeah. And they were up against different conflicts of diagnoses, opinions, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they couldn't
you
go
were
down
fighting
that
it
road because I thwarted that, which I was lucky enough to do.
Deb, I just want to read you some of the content of Commissioner Wood's report, his final report. And in this, he stated that ritual abuse victims are, quote, nearly always women who during therapy for a variety of personal problems reveal previously unrecalled memories of bizarre childhood victimisation at the hands of multiple offenders and who are frequently diagnosed as suffering from multiple personality disorder. Now, I just want to say something there before...
That is a load of crap, number one.
Oh, yeah.
For one, I wasn't a victim of satanic ritual abuse. I had never been to therapy prior to this.
Yeah.
My children had never been to therapy prior to this.
Yeah.
So,
it's not men you're dealing with children, and they don't suffer from multiple personality disorder, do they, these children? And the other thing is, a lot of the victims, the vast majority of Wood Royal Commission victims who I've spoken to are men. They've nearly all been men.
Yeah.
So this is an absolute lie, and the reason why they were men is because they were boys that were generally taken from detention centres, boys' homes in the New South Wales area, Darrick, Minder, etc. Yes. And they were prostituted at Porky's child pedo brothel nightclub and other clubs, Costello's, and they were owned by Roger Rogerson, the corrupt police officer who's in jail now.
Yeah.
And they were trafficked to all these VIP personalities that, Tim Roy, that we interviewed last week, and other people have named. Now, can you expand on that as to the types of victims?
And other places like that, which was a known haunt or frequented bar by the legal establishment, the judiciary and barristers, solicitors, etc. Now, they were taking the boys there for them to rape and whatnot out at the back of Costello's. Now, the reason I got to this one was because it involves another case, quite sensational case here, with a murder of Anita Cobby.
Yeah.
With the Murphy brothers and another boy who murdered her quite savagely and very ritualistically.
It was ritual.
Came home. Now, these boys, the Murphy boys, were prostituted and whatnot from a young age in the area that I lived. Now, I knew the Murphy boys, and I remember as a child being at school, and one of the Murphy boys was in in the playground, and we had to do as kids, they used to do what they call folk dancing in the playground with music and whatever. This young boy used to crap his pants at the time. No one wanted to go near him because he's stinky and all the rest of it, and he always made sure he was always dirty and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But what I know now about abuse, this boy was incontinent basically because of repetitive sexual abuse. It's belief.
Yes.
Now I know what I know. I mean, I was a child then. I didn't know. All I knew was this boy crapped his pants, you know, and he stunk. I didn't want to go near him.
So you're saying he's one of the perpetrators of the Anita Cobby murders?
Yes, he's in jail. All of the brothers are.
And this is the one you knew, yeah?
Yeah, and I didn't know any of this back then as a child.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And then when the Anita Cobby case came out, then and I knew then everything fell into place. Because they went to the same. They were picked up by the same people.
Mm.
And so I know now what happened with them.
Well, I'll just say something there, Deb, to add to that. When I was training as a parole officer in Sydney, I was, speaking with some other trainees at the academy there, and people training to be prison guards and so forth. Anyway, one girl, she actually read their files and read the details on what actually happened to Anita Cobby, because a lot of the information wasn't made public. And also, my second source was a friend I went to school with, Justine Thompson. She married a lawyer from South Australia anyway. He was with the firm working on the Cobby case. And so he read the file. And so I've had two sources confirm that it was a Luciferian ritualistic style murder that I'm familiar with because of my childhood. But also they did various things like don't listen now, listeners, if you don't want to be upset, but I'll give an example. Those boys made incisions in Anita Cobby's body and had sex with those incisions. Yes. And that wasn't made public. And when they took them into prison, I know that they took those boys and they have what's called an AIDS ward. Yes. With homosexual people and sex offenders who were dying of AIDS, and they just let them go. They chained them. The prison guards chained those boys to a wall, and they were just gang raped.
Yeah.
So these are not, it's not pleasant, but these are the details. Really, the public should know so that they can be outraged and they can be properly informed as to what actually goes on.
Yeah.
But go on.
Yeah, so I mean, now looking back, there was quite a lot of activity all around us, but the dots were never connected, and it was all a separate incident. Everything was dealt with as a separate case. Nothing was joined together to link these perpetrators together, and a lot of it never was made public or came out. And so what I'm saying is that those in positions of authority, investigation, police, judiciary, etc., are covering this up. They are protecting the perpetrators with case after case after case after case. The list is endless.
Yes, it is. And it's still going on. Now, getting back to Commissioner Wood. Now, you mentioned, I've been told by various people that Commissioner Wood, he was originally from England, but he was employed by the New South Wales government to conduct this royal commission into the Sydney-based pedophile ring. He was actually a member of that very pedophile ring.
Yeah, and that's why he was selected to do it.
That's why he chose to do it, exactly. And basically, you were familiar with some of this information and about him being a pedophile himself, yeah?
Yes, through other people that I said to you, I joined all these different groups.
Yeah.
Trying to raise awareness, supporting other people, as well as getting the support for myself and validation because of the annihilation and the attempts to discredit me left, right and centre.
Yeah.
So by joining these other groups with people, with professionals, I was able to therefore have that support from professionals to account for my credibility over a long period of time of knowing me. So no matter what they came up with one of their reporters or their doctors, that they might say that, I met her and, I assessed her and she's this, that and the other with, diagnosis, which one of their psychiatrists attempted to do. And this one, he's well known, Dr. Chris Rickard Bell. He did an assessment on me for the Crown. And when we went into court in the Victims' Compensation Appeal, my barrister pulled him in and he was on the stand. Anyway, his report was basically pulled apart. He was discredited for his report, and him was discredited.
Yeah.
And the reason being for that, when he was questioned, they also pulled out the letter of introduction the Crown sent to him for what they wanted in this assessment. And it was shown that they basically told him what they wanted him to find, and that's exactly the report he wrote. And that was proven. The Crown objected strongly to this letter of introduction being produced into evidence. The Judge Ainsley Wallace, demanded to see it, said no, she wants to see it. So then he was on the stand and he was torn to pieces basically as basically an opinion for hire.
Yes, and
Now,
so he wrote an unfavourable report against you.
Yes, unfavourable against me.
That's
but
Dr. Chris Bell.
for what they wanted to try and shut this matter down. Now, the other psychiatrist, who is well known as a pedophile protector, who I've had dealings with as well, who actually ran his finger across his throat in a gesture to me to indicate you're dead, you know, like from one ear to the other across your throat.
Okay.
Sort of insinuation. Anyway, his name is Professor Brent Waters. Now,
Brent Waters.
Brent Waters.
Brett.
Yeah, Brent, B-R-E-N-T.
Okay.
Brent Waters, Professor Brent Waters. He is notorious. Now, because I was doing all the support work I was doing, he tried to intervene in my case early on, but I already had Anne at that stage and said no. I was also already warned about him. Now, in my subsequent dealings with other cases along the way, when I was in these groups and also supporting other women and non-offending parents or, you know, victims, they were also male, of these people, he said to me when I rang him and I said, don't threaten me again after that case. We were in court. And he was giving evidence so that this woman could not see her child again. She was trying to prevent her husband, who was the perpetrator and involved in one of these cults, from abusing the child. And so because she raised the issue of sexual abuse, they targeted her, and he was the psychiatrist here in this, going for the father. And now the outcome of that particular case was this mother was not allowed to see this child again until she was 18 and was placed with the perpetrator.
Well, Deb, that's what's happening. The detective way up in charge of my case, I got a phone call from a lawyer who said that a client of hers, same thing happened to her client. She had a little 4-year-old boy. The boy, this detective wrote a report against the mother, who had gone forward to police to dob in a pedophile ring and say, look, her husband was sexually abusing this child and the husband was prostituting the child out to other men in this ring. And so this police officer turned on this woman, and this police officer is being described as absolutely vicious, and the terrible things, tried to make out the mother was a nutcase, etc., etc. And the child has, for the last, 4 or 5 years, being continually abused by the father and the pedophile ring in Sydney, and the mother's not allowed contact with the child.
Yes, exactly.
Same scenario. I've heard it over and over and over and over.
We have got a damage control system here in
family
this
law
country
courts
that protects this child slave sex trafficking ring at the highest levels.
Yes.
And anyone who comes forward, look out. Now, when
Australia's
I
family law courts are just a child prostitution racket.
Yes, it is. I have no doubt about that. Now, when I went to this Federal Royal Commission and I spoke to Commissioner Fitzgerald when I was in there, basically because I already knew from being in the Wood Royal Commission what to expect. Now, I'd already spoken with people in there on the phone previously, and I know that a Royal Commission is basically a PR exercise, right?
It's a whitewash.
It is, and it's a fishing expedition to find out who knows.
Yes, it's an information gathering exercise so they know where to plug up the leaks.
That's right, and who to get rid of, who's too much of a threat.
Yes.
Well, Commissioner Fitzgerald tried to patronise me. He said, he understood exactly what I was going through. I nearly jumped across the table. I said to him, don't you dare insult my intelligence and try and patronise me.
Yeah.
He said, you have never walked my shoes. Yeah. And he's put his head down. And the woman that was in the room with him, she said to me, oh no, what we mean by that is empathise. I went, yeah, right.
Is that Milroy or Judge Coate was with you?
She was I forget what her name was. I've got
Dark
it written
hair?
down somewhere. She was a dark woman. I think she might have been.
She's an Indigenous child psychiatrist from WA.
Yeah, well, I had
She's
her.
good.
What he wanted to know was, because they obviously knew that I'd worked with a lot of people and my name had been mentioned in there to them by others that I had worked with and supported. And he wanted to know what advice I gave to these other parents that I had worked with. And I told him straight. I said, if there's no report or notification made when they came to me, I said, I told them not to say a word to protect their children. Otherwise, they would probably be removed from them. You know.
Yes.
So, I didn't say those words. I just said, I told them to say nothing. We would help them to disappear and heal their kids quietly. And the look on his face, they looked at each other, their eyes opened wide, their mouths opened wide, because then they realise there's a lot of other victims out there they
Yes.
don't know about. And they don't know what information it has, and they know I know about it.
And I just want to say to listeners too, if you haven't already come forward, if you're in the position of those mothers who find out their husbands sexually assaulting their children and maybe prostituting their children, what you do is you act by stealth. You do not inform authorities. The authorities are the enemy. What you do is you quietly get your money together. You do not let your husband know. You quietly plan an escape and you disappear with those children. You must be willing to sacrifice material goods, whatever, relationships. You disappear, you go on the run.
Yes.
But you have a backup plan and you go to a women's shelter if you have to, you go anonymously, if you need to find support, but you go in and you say that your husband's, beating you or something abusive or whatever you want to say.
Yes,
but you do it anonymously, never give your details out. If you can, on the black market, change your name and your children's identities, you do that, because let's face it, the authorities are not there helping us. They are part of a national and international child trafficking operation.
Yes. Well, going to that, what you just said then, I'll give an example of one particular case that I dealt with. This woman, her husband was obviously multi-generational. She caught him in...
Just explain, Deb, what that term multi-generational means.
That means children who are born into an occult family, and this has been going on for generations. So this was obviously from what I can gather from the information I got from this particular woman, she thought that she knew something was wrong, but she didn't know what it was. She was often taking the kids to the doctors with things and didn't quite know what it was, because, we don't know these things until after the fact. So anyway, she caught her husband in bed with his mother, and so then the penny dropped. She became aware, the aha moment, something's going on here. Anyway, one of the children disclosed to her quietly. She said, okay, shh, we don't say this. Anyway, she went to see someone she knew who was in a position of authority. They got back to me. They rang me because they knew about the work I'd been doing for years and put this woman in touch with me without making any report. Now, my advice to this woman was, okay, your children have already been abused. Because of the influence of this family in this place, you cannot make a report. If you do, you will lose your children to them for good. They will take them off you and give them to them because they are part of this. So I said, right, now you get the same thing. You have to forego everything if you can. What you need to do is get what you can together, formulate an escape plan, push his buttons till he hits you. The minute he hits you, you get a domestic violence order and get him removed, or you can get out that way. You can get placed in a shelter and you can move away. And therefore, you've got a record of violence of this man. So she did all that, and that was how she got out. No mention of sexual abuse, no nothing, and moved away. She let everything go. They had property and houses and whatever too. They were well-to-do. But he was going to take everything anyway. But she still had one property he didn't know about that was in her family that she lived with her father. So she still had something to go to. So she was okay there. But she got away from them, and she was able to rescue her children and get them out and start healing them quietly. But if she had have gone further down the normal channels that most people will do, when something happens, they believe that oh, you know, a crime has been committed here, we go to the police and we report it and they will get charged and da-da-da-da-da. No, that doesn't happen. You report this. You are the one who's going to end up charged. You are the one who's going to lose your children. You are the one that's probably going to end up in a psych ward or in jail and set and discredited, and have you will be torn to pieces. The perpetrator will be protected. That is a given.
That's a fact.
I have that documented time and time and time again from numerous cases.
And we have Commissioner Wood to thank for that situation.
Well, not just Commissioner Wood. It's not just Commissioner Wood. I mean, we also have people in politics. I mean...
Yeah. And police commissioners. I mean, John Avery was in power back in the late 80s.
John Avery was in power when my case was going through.
John Avery, Deb, was one of my abusers.
Right, well, John Avery was the one when I said to him, what's happening with my case, I wanted either, you know, because of the murders and everything involved. He said, my case is completed, and I have that in writing, my case is completed but not closed. And the reason that they kept it open like that was because of the allegations of murder in it. The other reason is, because the case is still open, they don't have to discuss it or release any details because it's still open. This was another tactic that they used to prevent information being made available.
Yeah. They don't close it.
The other one that we're aware of with a lot of people who have come out with stuff was Bob Carr, the Premier.
They've all named, all the boys have named Bob Carr as picking up boys from Darling.
Oh yeah, the other one was John Dowd. John Dowd was also caught picking up boys at the wall in King's Cross.
Yes.
He ended up on the bench of the Supreme Court.
Well, the other ones are that Tim Roy has just named Gordon Moyes from 2GB and the Wesley Mission, City Mission in Sydney, and John Laws, Alan Jones, John Singleton.
Yeah, I've heard all those names before.
Yeah, I was just about to say it. So have I, through other boys. Everyone's just naming the same people over and over, and these are the ones at the heart of the Wood Royal Commission.
Yeah.
This is why Commissioner Wood was employed to cover it up.
Yes.
Now, I just want to say about, I just want to go and read Commissioner Wood's report, because I'm saying this because Commissioner Wood's report on ritual abuse in Australia has had a profound impact on the practice of psychology and psychiatry. It
has had a profound impact, but, you know, the credence I give it, it's less than toilet paper.
I know, but it was originally cited and formed the foundation for the training that psychologists get now. So you know, I mean, I've been through 6 years of psychology training, and I witnessed this firsthand. Because of Commissioner Wood, I witnessed victims' testimonies being mocked in psychology master's level forensic psychology class at Bonjuni.
I agree with that, because one girl that I have spoken to, another girl who, she had not cult abuse, but just abuse in a family, and then was raped later by police officers. She was referred to me by another friend, and she said to me she was scared. She was sleepwalking. She said, because, you know, she'd go to bed, and, you know, she knows she had half a tank of petrol and she in a car, and she knew the mileage, and she'd get up in the morning and she'd have a quarter of a tank of petrol and the mileage was different. So she was driving while she was sleepwalking. Yeah. Anyway, as I talked to her, I realised, no, it was multiple personality disorder, or
dissociation
identity disorder, DID. And I said to her, she was already in therapy, and I said, right, you go back to your psychologist and you tell her what I've just said. And she did. And the psychologist tried to say, oh, no, it was fugue states, it was this, that, the other. They would not go down this road. And I said, right, you get your psychologist to ring me, or you find another one. You tell her to either work with this with you, or you find someone else who will. Anyway, she agreed. Now, it turned out that she had 8. And she's doing well now. Yeah. Now, most people want to try and make out the dissociative identity disorder is a rare thing. No, it's not.
No, it's just common.
It is a normal, natural state. And I'll give an example for listeners who don't know this sort of thing. You'll often hear with people, if you haven't experienced it yourself, with a traumatic event such as a car accident or going to be hit by a car, that things will suddenly slow down and go into slow motion and whatnot. That is a form of dissociation where time will slow down. Then you will also, if you have been injured or something has happened, such as a fall, you'll remember up to a certain point, and then a short time, a period of time after that, you don't have any memory of. It's sort of like a blank, like the lights have gone out. And other people, such as paramedics or hospital staff or even family friends, will say they were talking to you at that time. You have no recollection of it. That is the dissociation. It is a natural mechanism the brain has to deal with a traumatic event where it switches it off. So therefore, after repeated traumas, when we're talking about sexual abuse, the child dissociates because it's a natural mechanism to protect the child's psyche, to dissociate and switch that and blank that bit out. After a while, those memories of repetitive abuse, which have been blanked out, go elsewhere in the brain, which formulates another personality that deals with the trauma that the conscious memory, such as yourself, if you've had that part where you've had that blank spot, does not recall. But over a period of time, these memories resurface that have been pushed away. And this is where we call the recovered memories from. Now, when people say that these recovered memories are bullshit, they are not bullshit. They have been stored elsewhere, like in a different section of your filing cabinet inside your brain of memory. And that might make it easier for people to understand how this happens and what we're talking about when we're talking about dissociation, and when they do deliberate trauma dissociation to create this, so the child does not remember consciously, because those traumatic memories are stored elsewhere in this, like in a different part of your consciousness, until such time as one day they might resurface, and sometimes they do flood the victim, and they don't cope, and they're going out there and people think they're crazy. No, they're not. They're overwhelmed. They can't cope. These memories of horror and torture and pain are flooding them, and they're reacting as you would when you're just being in it and reliving it all over again.
I couldn't have said it better myself. You've the way you described that is so close to an article I wrote years ago that's up on my site, pedosdownunder.com, or pedophilesdownunder.com. And it's true. People have no concept of what is really just a normal reaction to extraordinary stress.
Exactly.
That's all DID is.
Yes,
but then you touched on the other phenomenon, which is where you've got the likes of the Nazis. Yes. They scientifically analysed this phenomenon, and they were able to artificially induce a DID situation using torture and drugs and unethical hypnosis, etc. And that's documented.
They've put it in the movies. Perfect examples of it, of mind control. One was with Charles Bronson in a movie called Telefon, Telefon. Now you'll see in that where I think it was the Russians, and he rang a bell, and all of a sudden the bell was the trigger for this guy to react and do his programming. Another one was the Manchurian Candidate with Denzel Washington, with the memories when they play with the mind. Another one, a very good one, is The Long Kiss Goodnight. Another one is The Bourne Identity, where they created Jason Bourne. Now, that was all done through repetitive traumas. If you look at the movie at the end, they show you the drowning, the almost drowning, and this is also a part with children when they bring them to the point of where they think they're going to die. Then the perpetrator then suddenly rescues them. This creates a bond within the mind of bonding to the perpetrator, because on one hand they're trying to kill them, but the next minute they're rescuing and saving their life.
Yeah.
And this is where this confusion comes in, and the power of the perpetrator is so powerful with some of these victims, because they know that they have the power of life and death over them. So these people then become omnipotent. They become like gods. They become all powerful. And these children don't know how to put that in perspective. They don't have the life skills. They don't have the tools. They don't have the equipment to deal with that.
So they split.
Yeah.
They go along with what the perpetrator
very
designs.
Very clever. They know how to do this, and they do it deliberately, and they use it in their own military and their own spy agencies. Now, we know that with the Presidio case over in the US, with the military over there, what was going on as well. There is multiple documentation on various cases with the military, and with the alphabet agencies, I call them, you know, whether it's CIA or ASIOs or NSAs or, you know, you name it, who utilise this natural function and abuse it for their own ends.
Yes.
And these pedophiles do it and use it and abuse it for their ends as well. So it's not just for the military and, you know, defence and whatnot to create these spies or, you know, that's only done at this end of the thing. This is where the psychiatrists and that come into play in all of this, and doctors, because they've got to bring them to the brink of death and they need doctors to revive. They also have psychiatrists and whatnot.
And psychologists like Dr. Anthony Kidman, my perp.
Yeah, well, there you go. And, you know, the abuse of psychiatry and medicine here to formulate this end for their own purposes is nefarious. I mean, it's so abhorrent to the average man or woman in the street who has no knowledge of this, what's going on. It is, for me, it's hard to relate to a lot of people because they have no concept of what's really going on. And to try and tell them that, they are looking at you.
Well, it's like the Matrix, Deb. You know, it's like we've taken the red pill and we can't go back to ignorance.
That's right. I can't go back to sheep.
Now, tell me, you've actually had a lot of contact with victims and parents of this mind control.
Yeah, basically that's the foundation of cult abuse. That is the foundation. They have to get them to dissociate so that they can continue the abuse, so that the parents don't know, because the child will act normally, because the child has no conscious memories of the abuse because they have dissociated and put those memories elsewhere. That is how the child can function, still go to school, go home. And this is I'm talking about children who are not in a family where it's going on. I'm talking about children who are in a family where this is not going on within the family or with relatives around them. It's going on through their Boy Scouts, club groups, schools, Sunday schools, you know, some other activities such as dance.
Public schools too, the schools.
Yeah, the schools as well, exactly what I'm saying. And also like talent agencies and things like that, where they go to dance class or drama classes. I mean, these people access children. They are in every field where children are accessible.
There was in the Sutherland Shire, there was somebody on Facebook sent me an ad. They were horrified because the ad was pictures of lovely children with Shire kids wanted. Yes. And we all of us on my page went, wanted for what? And it was for a photograph shoot for a calendar. Yet this is how, and I'm not saying this particular organisation's involved, but I just balk at that. I would not recommend anybody take their kids to some kind of talent scout, you know, model scouting children's agent. Usually they're involved.
That's right.
That's how they get kids.
That's right. And they take the photos of them and then they pick the ones they want. And then next minute, your child's gone.
Your child's gone missing. Or they check where if the child's vulnerable, if it's a single parent who's struggling or something like this. Well, they pick who they target. And they do it through nippers too. My kids are very involved in surf life saving, you know. My daughter's a surf life saver.
It's another organisation with children that's accessible.
Yep. You know, it happens all over. Now tell me, we were talking one time about the influence of Nazi war criminals in this organisation, which I have witnessed right at the top. Yes. And you were saying something about you've seen a bit of a relationship between this desire for Aryan-looking children and these cults. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, the family cult with Anne Hamilton Byrne is a prime example, where all the children's hair were dyed blonde. You know, these children were abused and stolen and false adoptions and everything else. Those photographs of those children is in your face. There's no denying it. That's one of the ones who are so obvious. For that, you know, we're talking to a lot of people probably here that don't have much information or insight into this. So if they look at the photographs from the children of the Anne Hamilton Byrne family cult case in Victoria of Australia and see the photographs of these children, you will see it is there. It is undeniable. And I've noticed it with a lot of others. It's less dramatic and less in your face, but it's there nonetheless.
And did they not target your own daughter?
Yes, they targeted. They tried to grab my daughter. They've tried to grab my son. My son was blonde and blue-eyed too. Because they were very photogenic. They were very good-looking children. They still are. You know, I love my children, and without my children, there would be no end for me. There's no life. And this is what I said to docs when they first tried to. I knew what she was up to. That's why I went and got the referral to the psychiatrist and whatever. I said, I put it to you this way. Anything happens to my children, I have got nothing left to lose. And I'll be coming for you first. And that's when she said, you do what you like, Debra. And I said, that's fine, I will.
Yeah.
And it was only through my own insight, like, you know, you get that gut feeling that something's wrong with this person. You know, from their reactions, from the things they say, the looks on their face, the smirks, all that sort of thing. You pick it up and you think, oh, you know, there's something wrong here.
And the microfacial expressions that you pick up.
Yeah, well, I had no training of it. I was just, you know,
No, you don't need training if
you know what to look for. At that stage, I didn't know anything.
But also, if people are very bright, if they're high IQ, they can automatically read microfacial expressions. They don't have to be trained in it.
Right. Well, see, I've never been trained in anything like that. I'm just a normal mum who just said, you know, this is wrong, and I've seen not only through my own case and history. With the system, but through many, many others, that this is wrong. We have a huge problem here, and my conscience can't say, well, my kids are okay, yours don't matter, Jack. Every child matters, you know, and they don't have a voice. So for those parents who didn't have the knowledge that I did and the experience, I've been able to help a lot of them because of my insight. And experience through the process of systems abuse and how they go about things to shut people down, to discredit them, to cover it all up, basically, and protect their networks. I mean, child trafficking is a very lucrative business, and we're talking not only here with the child sexual abuse here, then we're talking the huge amounts of money that is made with child porn and snuff movies and whatnot with these murders, and where the child is either abused to the point of death happens or is intentionally inflicted by them because that's their bent. I was working with several federal officers as well, and I gave them information on another particular case, and I said, we'll see how you go with that one first, and then we'll see what happens after that. Now, these officers... Then I'd been talking to them for a while over that, and all of a sudden they didn't contact me anymore, and I didn't know why. Anyway, I let it go for a bit, thinking, oh, well, they might be busy. Anyway, I ended up contacting one of them, and he said to me, please don't call me anymore. And he told me what happened, that they got called in, they got told to hand over all the evidence that they had, that included the information I gave them, all documented and everything and whatnot, and they were given 24 hours to take leave, and then they were transferred to another department. That tells you how high this goes.
Yeah, that's the cover-up. And another example of cover-up by the current Child Abuse Royal Commission that's been conducted at a national level in Australia is that you were saying that you were banned by the current Royal Commission from testifying against Hillsong when they specifically targeted Hillsong and were calling for Hillsong witnesses. Now, you're a choice witness, and yet the current Royal Commission banned you. Can you tell us about that?
They tried to say they didn't have any records of me contacting them, or that it was in late or whatever, and they had witnesses for that. When I said, well, this is rather strange, you want witnesses against Hillsong and institutional abuse. I've got a winning case here where we've been proven to be validated by a court of law here in the Court of Appeal, Criminal Court of Appeal against with the Victims Compensation Unit, where my children gave evidence and won the case and were awarded compensation, criminal compensation damages. Even though that was a pittance and an insult, it didn't matter. It wasn't the money. The money was a pittance, but because they capped it at $50,000 per family. But and it didn't go on incidents either. It went on the whole thing. So, you know, given that $10,000 was in legal costs, I mean, you know,
so your kids walk off with a lousy 40 grand for...
No. My son, my daughter was only awarded 5.
Oh, awesome. 5 grand. Yeah.
And it also came out too in that particular VCT hearing with my daughter when we all went in on the appeal, that the hospital originally where we went to for the children to be examined, the hospital and docs and all the rest of it had hidden the medical corroborative evidence on my daughter. They couldn't hide the medical evidence on my son, but my son was younger. He was only 6. My daughter was older, so they hid the corroborative evidence on her.
What
which
hospital
came
was
out,
that, Deb?
That she had a perforated hymen, etc. From
Yeah. What hospital did that?
That was the Children's Hospital at Camperdown, which is now moved to Westmead.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, another interesting case that came out of that particular hospital with Hillsong was a pastor was charged with abuse. The mother walked in. She had two girls. The mother caught the pastor who had befriended her and picked her up basically and started a relationship with her from Hillsong at the church. Anyway, she took the children to the hospital. The evidence was semen in the throat. The doctor involved was Dr. Suzette Booth, and he pled guilty. So I know the details would come out in the children.
What was the name of that pastor who was found guilty?
I can't remember. I'd have to find notes. I haven't gone through them all. I didn't have them handy.
No, that's all right. So he was a Hillsong
Pastor, yes.
a youth pastor or a senior pastor, or
I can't remember now. It's gone back a few years.
yeah, that's okay.
We're going back over a decade, or more than a decade. Trying to store all names and whatnot in my head.
Yeah, I understand.
I used to be able to rattle it off, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
but
not so easy now.
Now I struggle sometimes with remembering some information.
Yeah, we're getting old, aren't we?
Well, it's not just old; it's the amount of information that you end up dealing with case, not just your own, but case after case after case, with the names that keep coming up and the details.
Yeah.
You get to a point where you're overloaded and overwhelmed sometimes. Some of the kids that another case was only a small young child. She was only 22 months old, I think. Her internal injuries were such that she'd probably never have children. But because the child was too young to give evidence against the perpetrator, the court wanted to still allow the perpetrator unsupervised access. Yeah. So, it gets to the point where you have to, in order to protect these children from the system and from the perpetrators, ordering them to go back to them so they can be continually re-abused.
You have to break the law.
To get them out. We have to formulate a network of people where we could send parents and their kids to stay and keep moving them until we could get them settled and things get sorted a bit to protect the children. Yeah. I mean, when you get to that point, and you I haven't had to do that for a long time now, but when you've got to have, and you can't use your own phone, you can't talk from home, you've got to use strategies and means to stay under the radar, so to speak, to keep these kids safe for a period of time long enough till we can get them more established. It's not an easy task. I mean, it costs money. I have spent basically my life doing this, and using all the resources I've had to protect children and help these non-offending parents to protect their children, and people within my network that I used to use back then. We all put ourselves out and used our resources in order to do all this with no funding, no extra from anywhere. Sometimes the bills didn't get paid because I had to save a child instead. All this sort of thing, the struggles comes into play here on so many various levels. There's the issues of transport, and they can't use their car anymore because it's targeted, it's flagged, the police, if they see it, they pull them up. Then you've got to organise another vehicle registered in another name so that they can get around and go from place to place unnoticed. Then there's the issue of accommodation, food and whatever, because you don't want them accessing bank accounts in an area where they are. So oftentimes, they would leave their key card with me, and I would withdraw the money in cash out of that. And then I'd go to another bank and deposit that money in an account. And then I would transfer that money to someone else to be able to give them, they could draw it out then and give them the cash. So there was no record of where they were. They might be in another state or whatever. And I would do it all from over here and organise it so that the money could get to them. But there was no paper trail to where it was going, so to speak. There was a lot of things that we had to do. And I mean, it's all time, effort, it's stress, Yeah. You're got to watch out, you're being watched, and because the minute you use a key card with someone who's targeted, it flags.
Deb, I can testify to that. When my whole family, my mum and siblings, we all had to go on the run when I first started talking about the ritual abuse and all that sort of stuff in Sydney. and they come after us, and we were chased by multiple four-wheel drives, and we were up on a beach in Queensland, and my mother had just used a key card, and next thing we know, there were these guys in suits coming down to the beach in a suit with a very old style cell phone, you know, like looked like a big brick, and looking for
That was
us,
a satellite phone, that's why.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
phone.
And those satellite phones, I think that's what these four guys who confronted me, Snap Rep, Nikki Davis and Raina Michelson, at Marrickville train station in Sydney when I was there last 2nd of November last year, 2015. We had these four guys with military haircuts, etc., dressed like workmen at 5 PM, and they didn't have a bit of dirt or sweat on them. And
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they come up to us and scouted.
I've had exactly the same thing.
They had those phones you're talking about.
Yeah, I've had exactly the same thing. Not only me but others. And when I've been followed and all the rest of it by vehicles and whatnot, I've actually rang the homicide squad and I spoke to the guy there, and he was obviously a damage control agent. And I said to him to call him off, and I said, listen, you're only used as a patsy too. And I said, you think you're protected now, but I said if the shit hit the fan, you would be you're dispensable too.
Yeah.
I said, so I don't think you're safe. I said, you're just another damage control agent who is easily dispensable as well. I said, now you either call your dogs off, because if push comes to shove, I said, trust me, I said, I will do so. Now I've had ASIO follow me. I got to the point where I knew it was intelligent, so I rang ASIO and I asked for their personnel department. And they put me through, and I said, well, I'm ringing for, he said, can I help you and whatever? And I said, yes, I'd like to apply for a job. And he said, well, what would you like to do? I said, well, I don't really care. I said, I don't care if I'm in your admin or, I said, I don't care if I'm a tea lady there. I said, but if you want to watch me, because I monitored my phone calls, I could hear him on the line, I was being followed and everything. I said, if you want to watch me, you can pay for the privilege. And he laughed and he said, you've got some chutzpah. Now, that wasn't part of my vocabulary at the time. I had to look up what the word meant. In other words, it means you've got some guts.
Yeah.
So, when I've told them, call them off, I'm not an idiot. I know who's following me and I can see it. It's quite clear.
And what was their appearance?
Very military style.
Yeah.
Like you just described. And I've had my friends...
What clothing did they wear, Deb, the ASIO officers?
What was that?
What clothing were they dressed in?
Often in suits.
Yeah, right.
Often in suits or smart casual.
Yeah, right. Well, now there's been some articles put up after I had this incident with tradesman-looking ones where there's been articles in Sydney Morning Herald and everywhere saying, ASIO are now recruiting tradesmen.
Yeah. I've had them on my telegraph pole outside and stuff like that too.
Oh, yeah, we've had that. Yeah, we've had that. I put up, hey, Deb, just on a light note.
Whatever you see in the movies when they're watching someone under surveillance and whatnot, how they have their vans and up on the poles or, in tradie uniform to go into somewhere or whatnot. Yeah, expect it, because that's exactly what they do. I've had it all. I've had all the different vehicles. I've had everything from a high-end BMW to the four-wheel drives. I've even had an orange-coloured V-dub follow me. And what I used to do, when I knew I was being followed, because I drive with one eye in the rear vision, and what I'd do when I knew I was being followed, I come up to a roundabout. Well, I'd put my blinker on to turn right, but I kept going around, and they'd go to turn right, and then I'd go around and around and around, and then just wave at
I've done that, yeah.
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 Or I'd turn the car off at a set of lights, and the light would turn green, and they're behind me, or two cars back, and bipping, and then I'd wait, and as soon as it was about to turn orange, I'd turn the car over. As soon as it turned orange, and then I'd duck around the corner, turn left, or something like that, or turn right, just get through, and they were stuck behind there at the lights, things like that. I had my car tampered with. I actually had my mechanic, he'd only just serviced it about a week and a half or 2 weeks at the max beforehand. Anyway, I went back to him and I said, because I only ever used the one person all the time with my car, And I went back to him and I said, look, it's going through a lot of petrol, are you sure you did something wrong, you didn't do something wrong or whatever? And he said, no. And he said, I'll come and have a look at it. And he had a look. And he told me to go inside and get a cup. And I went inside and got a cup. And he said, right, now turn the car on. I turned the car on and he put the cup underneath somewhere. And he said, right, turn it off. And I came back out and he went, look, and there was over half a cup of petrol in the cup. He said, this car was set to blow up. He said, the petrol was pouring over your motor. He said, how you haven't blown up yet, I don't know. Now, that was one instance. Now, that was reported to the Wood Commission. The incidents of being followed, where I actually filmed them with the video camera, that was handed in. Ritual sites on video were handed in. I never got any of that back off them, and I only had a couple of copies of some things, because in those days you had to do it on VCR, and to copy footage and stuff was
very difficult. It's not, you didn't have your iPhone, did you?
No, we didn't have any of that.
No. Listen, Deb, I just want to finish up. We've got to finish soon, but I want to finish up by reading Commissioner Wood's, some of his findings in his summary in his final report, and then I want your feedback on this.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
It's from, as someone who experienced all of this firsthand. So he said that ritual abuse does not exist from a law enforcement perspective because, and I quote, ready? There's 7 points. Rarely, if ever, are bodies of the victims or their graves found, nor do neighbours, friends or relatives report children missing in the numbers required to account for the allegations. Point 2, there is rarely, if ever, any evidence of the kind which can be confirmed by modern forensic technology. 3, signs of physical injury in the form of scarring, burns and the like are not found upon medical examination of victims who report torture of the most extreme and prolonged kind. More often than not, the medical examination fails to confirm the abuse as alleged. So 4, in cases of criminal conspiracy, intergroup jealousies or disputes inevitably develop and throw up an informant. In cases of ritual abuse, this rarely, if ever, occurs. Similarly, a co-conspirator who is otherwise in trouble and prepared to supply information in return for an immunity or assistance in sentencing rarely emerges. Again, and then point 5, again, contrary to experience with child sexual abuse generally, most of the offenders are reported to be females. 6, although many victims claim that photographs are taken and videotapes made of the activity, visual records of the kind are rarely found, nor does the large amount of child pornography in circulation portray the bizarre and ritualistic activities described. And finally, so many people tell the same story and allege the involvement of so many others in the events that it is difficult to see how there could not be independent evidence or knowledge of it on the part of persons outside the alleged rings. So there is main concluding points as to why ritual abuse, why what you said your children saw did not occur.
That's right.
What's your comment on all of that?
What a load of hogwash. That is typical damage control of someone who is involved saying, well, where is your evidence? My children were the evidence. We had the medical evidence. We have a missing child who is missing. Now they have Interpol and whatnot doing child abuse and the bulletin boards and the pedophiles connected together. It's there. The information is there. The evidence is there. Pedophile rings are operating with child pornography around the world. They're paying using credit cards. Interpol is getting them now for this. The evidence is there of this going on. That is rubbish. What a load of hogwash.
The evidence was there back then, though, Deb.
Of course it was. Of course it was. And I've still got it. And a lot more besides. As you now know. It's undeniable. When you've got two witnesses who've come forward with corroborative testimony and corroborative medical evidence, and the child is officially listed as missing, and they refuse and fail to investigate, what does that tell you? It doesn't take Einstein to figure that one out. 1 + 1 is 2. This doesn't make 10 and some sort of fabrication. That evidence is irrefutable. The case has been won in a court of law as well, that this happened and occurred and damages were paid. So the evidence has been validated. So why isn't there any further investigation into this?
Well, I really think the current Royal Commission needs to bring Commissioner Wood up onto the stand, and we need to go over the content of the Wood Royal Commission. That's what needs to happen, because as far as I'm concerned, this Sydney-based trafficking ring is at the heart of all child trafficking and pedophilia in Australia.
They are not going to do that, because this is, like I said, a Royal Commission is a fishing expedition. It is a PR exercise to fool the gullible public that, look, we have investigated, we've done all this, we've put recommendations out there, all tied up in a pretty ribbon with a pretty present to sell to a gullible public, and they think, oh, well, they've done something about it now. In fact, nothing has been done. What they have done is find out who is a major threat, what evidence is available out there, which is why I got the reaction I did when I said what I said about other victims and their parents who have not, there's no reports made, and they have disappeared quietly. and I know who they are and where they are. And they are not going to get that information from me because I need to protect them.
That's right.
I will maintain that confidentiality to the last breath I take.
And on that note, I think we'll have to leave it there now. The 2 hours is up. So, Deb, I just really want to thank you for coming forward yet again. After all these years, you're still out there fighting. It's disgusting, and, you know, it's a very poor reflection on our government and our law enforcement agencies that you're sitting here with me having to go over this stuff again, trying to be heard. And
the only reason I went to this Royal Commission wasn't because I expected anything to happen. No, the only reason I went there was to validate others and to make sure it was on another record somewhere.
Yeah, documented.
That's all I went for.
Yeah, same here.
And they are aware of the legal problems I'm still facing. They are aware that I'm still being targeted by police. The police have tried to, get me out of my job. They've tried every trick in the book. They've threatened me I'm going to have a heart attack or something if they get me in there to lock me up. I'm not game to even drive anymore in case they try some the targeting is ongoing. The threat under which I live is ongoing. It has been going on since '89. We're now in 2016. I have not had peace in all this time.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you're dealing with other people as well. And like I said, the costs, not just psychologically, emotionally, financially, physically, is draining. The stress is enormous. It takes its toll. I mean, I can't do it forever, I know that. But I'll do what I can, while I can, where I can. And thanks for having me on. I hope it's helped someone with understanding the depths and the lengths that this goes to and the levels that it reaches, the depth, the breadth and the extent of it within the system. And if they can take something from it that will help them, and if not themselves, to support someone else to understand what happens to these children and why memories can come up the way they do, I've done something positive.
Like you have. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Fiona.
Let me run mine. And again, my body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine.
When I am touched, then I know how I feel. My feelings are mine and my feelings are real. Sometimes it's hard to say no and be strong. When the no feeling comes, then I know something's wrong. My body's mine from my head to my toe.
Please leave me alone when you hear me say no.
My body's mine to be used as I choose.
Not to be threatened or forced or abused.
This is my body, it's part of my time. I've got to take care of this body of mine.
My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine. My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine.
And we'll get all our friends around us and we'll sing a song together.
1, 2, 3, 4. My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine. And again, my body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine.
When I am touched, then I know how I feel. My feelings are mine and my feelings are real. Sometimes it's hard to say no and be strong. When the no feeling comes, then I know something's wrong. My body's mine from my head to my toe.
Please leave me alone when you hear me say no.
My body's mine to be used as I choose.
Not to be threatened or forced or abused.
This is my body, it's part of my time. I've got to take care of this body of mine.
My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine. My body's nobody's body but mine. You run
get all our friends around us, and we'll sing a song together.
1, 2, 3, 4. My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine. And again, my body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine.
When I am touched, then I know how I feel. My feelings are mine and my feelings are real. Sometimes it's hard to say no and be strong. When the no feeling comes, then I know something's wrong. My body's mine from my head to my toe.
Please leave me alone when you hear me say no.
My body's mine to be used as I choose.
Not to be threatened or forced or abused.
This is my body, it's part of our time. I've got to take care of this body of mine.
My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine. My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine.
And we'll get all our friends around us, and we'll sing a song together.
1, 2, 3, 4. My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine. And again, my body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine.
When I am touched, then I know how I feel. My feelings are mine and my feelings are real. Sometimes it's hard to say no and be strong. When the no feeling comes, then I know something's wrong. My body's mine from my head to my toe.
Please leave me alone when you hear me say no.
My body's mine to be used as I choose.
Not to be threatened or forced or abused.
This is my body, it's part of our time. I've got to take care of this body of mine.
My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine. My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine.
And we'll get all our friends around us, and we'll sing a song together.
1, 2, 3, 4. My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine. And again, my body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine.
When I am touched, then I know how I feel. My feelings are mine and my feelings are real. Sometimes it's hard to say no and be strong. When the no feeling comes, then I know something's wrong. My body's mine from my head to my toe.
Please leave me alone when you hear me say no.
My body's mine to be used as I choose.
Not to be threatened or forced or abused.
This is my body, it's part of our time. I've got to take care of this body of mine.
My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine. My body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body, let me run mine.
And we'll get all our friends around us, and we'll sing a song together.
1, 2, 3, 4.